Okay, one will be wondering when the word corruption is mentioned and the integrity of Nigeria as a nation comes to the fore, and whenever you are out there outside of this country and you say you're a Nigerian, people look at you and it's now left for them to determine what kind of relationship they want to have with you. But the recent comment that we got from the Prime Minister David Cameron saying that Nigeria and Afghanistan are fantastically corrupt nations. One would be wondering, is it fair, considering the present situation in the country, for the Prime Minister to say that Nigeria is fantastically corrupt?
Sure, you know, I'm not the spokesperson for Prime Minister David Cameron, and I'm not a spokesperson for colonial arrogance either. I do think it's important that people are able to express themselves. I also do think that Nigerians should not go around the world with chips on our shoulders, emoting and bloviating whenever a white person says something about us. I think we should be comfortable in our skin. The problem we have with corruption in Nigeria is actually impunity. It's about institutions and the application of rules to people. That's where we fail, because Nigeria is a very stratified and very hierarchical society. People steal our money under police protection. Okay? So, I'm a public officer. If I'm a public officer and I'm arranging to steal money, there is a police officer who is assigned to me as my orderly or as my close protection person, and the police officer actually is not going to, is duty bound to arrest me when they see I am not complying with the law. But rather than do that, rather than arrest me, exercise their powers as police officers, they'll be calling me Oga. And they'll be looking to get a little bit of commission from the money that they are supposed to make sure I don't take. That is what is wrong with our country. The fact that people in senior positions believe that there is an entitlement to plunder public assets because they are in senior positions. Now, that is the thing we've got to address, and that is what creates the impunity. That's what creates the destruction of public institutions, the destruction of rules, the destruction of processes, the absence of enforcement. And that is why people in other parts of the world think we are not serious people. Now, you would have entered an aircraft, for instance, from outside Nigeria. If you fly from Europe or North America, Nigerians who are willing to comply with basic rules of processing themselves through immigration terminals and airport terminals get to the airport in Nigeria and just become, it's like a virus enters their head in the aircraft, and they get to hear, oh, Ishaya, and who is Ishaya? Ishaya is not a person who is supposed to be in a sterile airport zone, but these people believe because they think they are big people, they can do away with everything. That mentality of doing away with everything, the mentality that rules don't apply to us but apply to other people, that is what foregrounds impunity in relation to corruption. That's what we've got to fight. And when we begin to convict people and send them to jail for stealing money, not just pretrial detention or putting people and refusing them bail, no, or refusing them passports to travel, no, but putting people in jail, having convicted them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years for stealing our money and plundering our public assets, then people like David Cameron we can confront them and tell them to go to hell with their silliness of colonial arrogance, and that we are an independent country. We may not always get everything right, but we have more honest Nigerians than there are honest Brits. I can tell you that one for a fact. I've paid taxes in the United Kingdom, so I don't get too overly bothered about colonial arrogance. It's always existed, it's going to exist. But the important thing is that we focus on rebuilding our country into something we all can be proud of, and a country that works for its citizens and does not excuse the misbehavior of people because we think those are big people. Once we do that, we'll be fine. David Cameron can go to hell.
Interesting thoughts there, Professor Odinkalu. But again, just like President Buhari was asked on the sideline as he was walking into the room where the discussions took place there, Mr. President, is Nigeria corrupt? I would like to ask you, Professor Odinkalu, is Nigeria corrupt?
So, look, I have my beef with what President Buhari said. And I honestly do have my beef with the way he carries on. I don't think it is the business of our president to put us down as a country. I want to be very clear about that. The United States has more prison convicts than all of Europe put together. And the president of the United States is not going to go out and say, oh, you know what, the United States is full of criminals. Nigeria is not more corrupt than any other country. What we have is a problem with impunity, with a problem with institutions. Every day in this country, I get renewed by Nigerians who are doing remarkable things. We all like to complain about our police force, but the Nigeria police has some of the most honest people I have seen. People who are going to spend their money to save people in difficulty. As chair of the National Human Rights Commission, even when my staff were not being paid, they were spending their money on investigations. They were spending personal money on making sure that people whom we got out of prisons got home. Every day in this country, there are drivers who pick up and return assets that people leave in their cars, assets that these drivers would never, ever be able to make in their legitimate lifetimes of working. What point am I making? Most Nigerians I know are honest people. Most Nigerians I know are not corrupt people. Most Nigerians I know will never work in government to be able to plunder assets of other people. And most Nigerians I know care enough about other people to be able to devote their personal resources to caring for those people. And as president, I believe that the leader of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has got to acknowledge the sacrifices and values of those people. So that when you ask me, is Nigeria corrupt? I think it is actually quite a silly question. Nigeria is over 178 million people. How can anybody talk about Nigeria being corrupt? That does not mean there are not individuals and people who are corrupt. But when you also look at the records, you see that we've not been able to convict people for corruption in a long time. And therefore, there is a problem. We had an Inspector General of Police, Tafa Balogu, who is a senior lawyer, who was convicted of plundering police assets. But the Nigerian legal profession didn't do anything against him. He's still a lawyer on roll, and he's able to practice. In the United States, when President Nixon resigned because of Watergate, he was what? He was disbarred by the New York and California bars. When President Bill Clinton went through his episode in relation to impeachment in the 1990s, he was disbarred. But here, people get convicted for crimes of corruption, and they get away with it. So I think it's important that we retain proportionality. We don't go into overdrive on these matters. We understand that Nigeria is a very diverse country with very proud people, most of whom are honest people, and whom every one of us in public service, particularly the president, must respect. Because those people give a lot for what they do. And when we talk about a country being corrupt, we actually abuse those people who live in accordance with the best ethos and values of our people. So I'm not going to answer the question, is Nigeria corrupt? I think it is a terrible question to ask. Is Britain corrupt? Is the United States corrupt? Is Italy corrupt? Now, nobody would ask that question. And so there is also a question, when people ask this kind of question, it goes, it fits the language, in my view, of colonial arrogance and of black guilt. And colonial is white, Nigeria is black. I don't get into those polarities because there is a subterranean racist element to the question, and I don't think we should get involved with it at all.